Well, hello and welcome to I Love Gay today. And we are all the way in London today. And we're here with Guy Duncan from Brand Equality. How are you, Guy?
I'm really well, especially after the last few years of
Oh,
COVID fun that we've just all had and
that
shared.
that we've all got to experience globally. For the first time, there was like truly an event that I think in history, it's going to be very interesting when they look back at this time.
It was quite something. It was quite something. So it's always lovely to catch up with someone and find out they've
Yep.
survived, got through it. They're looking okay. They're nothing too bad. So,
Exactly. I agree.
oh,
Well, it's interesting. I've gotten a chance to get to know you because you're so good on social media, and it's all across the board, especially Twitter and LinkedIn. And I see what you're up to. But what's interesting, we were just talking about history, and so you are in the world of advertising and marketing, and we'll talk about that. But also, you have this amazing love for history, and you seem to merge the two worlds together quite well.
yes, I've always loved history and politics as well. But history, I got my first degree in history, age 21, at university here in Britain, and I was too young. I just didn't appreciate it. And apart from the fact I've got this long-term memory issue, and I can't remember a thing that I remember that I read about or wrote about when I was 19. Probably because of many nights in Soho during my coming out years, and the alcohol that went into me. But I always knew that I wanted to go back and study history again. But I didn't realise back then that the chance would come up that I would be able to study queer history. That was just mind-blowing to me. And also, it's the first the course I did, and I just graduated a couple of weeks ago. And the course I did is the world's first Masters in Queer History at Goldsmiths, London University.
Wow.
And it was a privilege to be able to be part of that program. And it's such a good program. Apart from the fact I got to sit with lots of 23, 24-year-olds who taught me so much about IT and the evolution of the queer and fluid world, which was brilliant.
Plus, you had a chance to kind of, you've got your viewpoints on life and history from where you're coming from. But it's interesting because then you are immersed with all these folks that are considerably younger, and it all comes together during LGBT History Month there in the UK. So it's quite a perfect storm.
It's true. I do. You forget, everyone tries to. We've been called gay, and now we were queer, and now with this. What I can't remember the writer that christened it, with the alphabetic spaghetti of groups. Yes. And everyone homogenizes us in this sort of, we're all the same type, particularly marketing actually and advertising. We're slotted into a category, and we all think the same. We all go to the same places. We all drink the same brands. We all, and it's not like that. It really isn't. Particularly in the generations where, if you look at the generation before us, their biggest fear was losing jobs and being arrested. Yeah. Being arrested for who you are. Can you? A Gen Z guy and girl, and they just don't understand that kind of fear can happen to you just for going out onto the street. Yeah. That it kind of blows my mind, and I'm closer to them. God knows what it does to their mind. Yeah. But that's why history is so important. We're beginning to learn what stage we're at and what we're building on from generation to generation, which is, we've all got our moments. This generation will have their COVID moment, particularly the younger groups who were denied so much during their formative years. I can't imagine what it must be like to be in lockdown at the age of 21 or younger. Can you imagine? I'd have gone spare. I'd have had so many fines as well.
You would have drove your truck into the center of Ottawa.
Oh, well, I'm not sure I'd have done that.
Definitely not.
Just my libertarian requirement would make me want to go out, not my principles of fighting against a government who need to do this. I have full faith and respect that they are trying to condition and contain what has gone on. But no, I don't think I'd have been an Ottawa driver, even in a previous life.
No, what's interesting is that when we were talking a bit of history, but then also, in the world of advertising and marketing, I could even say from back in the 90s when we first launched a gay website, it was amazing for advertisers that they were just learning they could reach gay people, and we hadn't quite come up with the alphabet soup yet. And back then it was becoming gay and lesbian, then GLBT. So there's been this whole evolution, but that evolution has kind of come together with that. Then they learned, wow, I can reach gay travelers, or I can reach gay sports people or parents. And they started to really learn and realize that there were segments within our population that in today's world, it's all about being able to drill down to exactly who you want to reach.
I joined Lear Burnett in 1990, and to target a segment based on identity or color of skin or even gender was even though everyone understood who owns the shopping or back then who owned the shopping trip, as opposed to who didn't and who provided the money. Things have changed, but back then you just didn't target gay people. It wasn't even heard of until, and I remember this clearly, in Lear Burnett. It must have been 91, 92. And it was the time when the government was doing their first campaigns around the AIDS crisis in Great Britain. And I think there must have been a pitch for it. I don't know if Lear Burnett won it, but the media guy who knew nothing about gay media, literally, he knew I was gay. He came round to my office, or the area I worked in. I was a grad trainee office. Who am I kidding? And he said to me, what do you read? What papers? Literally, he was a major planner and buyer of media in an advertising agency, yet still had no idea how we immersed ourselves in London in Capital Gay and Pink News, and then later in Attitude. Had no idea. They were these sort of bundles of magazines that were left outside gay bars that were blocked out. All the sunlight was blocked out, and you certainly wouldn't go and pick one up in public. That was it. And so he had to surreptitiously come around and ask me about it and take notes. It was weird. It was just, it was like we were a different sort of alien that had landed on their planet.
But that's the reality of what, that's part of the history of where, what's brought us to where we're at today. And now we're so visible through, and especially social media and Facebook and Twitter, and then TikTok, TikTok super gay.
I haven't got into TikTok yet. The whole video, presenting myself on video. I've just done lots of modules. My first client for brand equality was to do the LGBTQ first global learning and skills module for their companies, and it's separated into basics, history, the consumer, media, and I am literally presenting. I mean, they're editing it beautifully, so I'm not presenting for an hour solidly to camera, but I'm such a perfectionist. I redid it and redid it and I'd be terrible on TikTok. I'd be obsessive. Just 7 seconds, but I've resisted that. I do all the others. I love Twitter. I really love it, just because I think it can be dangerous and damaging in lots of different ways. But it's a skill to be. I mean, there are some really funny, witty, engaging, smart people who manage to you can just follow and they just can bring you joy in 10 seconds.
I agree.
That's how I follow it.
No, I always look at Twitter as being a bit more human in that sense, that because it really, even though Instagram may do the same with showing you photos and so forth, but you can't really do a whole lot with that, but except like them. And
the only thing is we are surrounded by our own like. That's the only thing. Yeah. So the opposing view doesn't get in on Twitter, partly because I don't want to hear it sometimes.
Yeah, but, and that's what I was going to say, is that I feel that Twitter is more human because it really responds. The whole system responds well to when you don't just look at things, but when you engage with, when you remember there's a person on the other side. And so what's interesting is the but part that I was throwing in is that it does expose us all to new ideas and new concepts that the others don't, because Twitter is one of the few that shows you content from friends of friends. Not just people you're following, but their friends. And it's got to be smart enough to figure out, well, all those folks are now engaging with something. Maybe you might like it too. That's much more difficult. And I find it much more fascinating. And it's one of the reasons I like it a lot.
And who knew it would be the fastest news on the planet? I mean, literally, the moment it's happening. It may not be the most accurate, but the moment something happens, you've got a reportage from people on the ground, which is fascinating because it's outclassing the 24-hour news from CNN, BBC, from Sky, and all those guys who we thought was just too much anyway. And this is you want to go to the first and the quickest, you go on Twitter. Even I'm okay. My only straight gene that snuck through is I'm a big English football fan. I blame my dad, and I'm obsessed with it. But you know, it is the thing that snuck through, and I do it. But I watch the goals come through on Twitter before they come through on if you're following it on a news organization.
I believe it. Well, especially as a side note, I will say that from Twitter, I know that you are not alone. There are so many LGBTQ football clubs and organizations out in the UK. I'm amazed.
I know. It's still quite an intimidating place to go, an English football ground if you're LGBTQ. But the work they're doing and elevating the right to be there, the right for a voice, the right to be passionate about a game that is so male, white, straight, and almost, you know, has had a thuggish history to it and reputation, and so therefore, I mean, if you want to feel alienated as an LGBTQ person in the go back to the 70s into an English football ground, my God, scary places.
I can just imagine. But no, back on the advertising side, though, you've got quite a history because you were with Coca-Cola in the earlier days, and then moved into the world of ad agencies and kind of also helped bring you where you're at today. But that's a strong, unique and strong perspective, I think, because a lot of folks never really had quite that depth or even working with organizations and corporations at that higher level.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I started in ad agencies. I was a grad trainee at Lea Burnett, and I decided for various reasons to jump around a bit. So I went to J. Walter Thompson. I then went to, it was DMB&B at the time, Bates, Publicis, and that was my advertising career. And I spent 13, 14 years in advertising, and then went on to the design side because everyone said, you've got to multidiscipline. You can't just learn about advertising. You've got to do, and this was, you know, you've got to understand the internet. And if you don't understand the internet, you've got to understand design. I was always in love with art. And so I just thought, oh, this is my chance. I'm going to go into the design world. And so I went to the Ogilvy Group and worked with Coley Porter-Bell. And I loved design. I loved the interpretation of it. The fact that it was less argumentative than advertising, actually, as an agency. It was just more, it was easier going. It was also faster, and at time was much more creative. But don't tell the advertising people. So I did advertising, then design, and then I went client side for 8 years, where my learning curve just went up, because that's where I learned so much. I mean, I went into quite a senior position. I ran content in Europe, and then I ran the global content for Coca-Cola in Atlanta for the 2012 Olympic Games, the 2014 FIFA World Cup, the Open Happiness platform, when it was the big news when Coca-Cola changes an end line, and you know, the whole organization feels it, because 1 billion servings of Coca-Cola a day are sold on the planet, or they were back then. I'm sure they've increased them, but 1 billion, just think about it, it's just an extraordinary amount. So when Coca-Cola does anything, it's like that maxim that you know, a butterfly moves its wings here in the center or somewhere else in the Coca-Cola system, and the whole place feels it, and then culture feels it. I worked there at the most fortunate time with some extraordinary people. There was a guy called Jonathan Mildenhall who ran the content and creative, who was determined to win Creative Marketer of the Year at Cannes. That was his thing. And so we all fought for the world's best creative. We employed the world's best agencies, Wyden and Kennedy, Ogilvy, McCann, and we turned so much work down because it wasn't good enough. There was that kind of atmosphere. There were some brilliant people there that have gone on to do amazing things, and people like Wendy Clark, who's now chief executive of Dentsu Worldwide. I mean, she was an extraordinary leader. So I happened to be in part of this team at a kind of magical time, I believe. And we won Creative Marketer of the Year as a collective, the Coca-Cola company, purely down to that team and the work we were doing. We were winning lots of awards at Cannes, and it was a very special time. It was very, very good. It did burn me out though. They do work you hard, Coca-Cola.
It's fascinating as you're telling this story. I'm envisioning the whole world of with the series Mad Men and all the things, because towards the end of that series is when they brought up, when they integrated the Coca-Cola ad slogan into it at that time.
There were a couple of people. I'd come off Coca-Cola at the time, and I'd gone into the North America region. I was running all the non-sparkling. It was very odd, the juices and sports drinks and everything. So I was doing that. But I remember chatting to Wendy because she had to write an NDA to the Mad Men team just in case it leaked, and it was highly secretive. And we were allowed, and so they were really embedded into that process. Yeah. Which was really interesting. But the one thing I learned about Coca-Cola, which I didn't expect to learn, and it was a surprise, day one, was marketing with purpose. And that completely transformed the way I thought about marketing, because all these things were happening in the Coca-Cola system. Coke's got a reputation for being a huge American corporate, for not caring, for only selling one product. It sells many others, but one product that's not necessarily perfect for you. I found out all these things they were doing. They were running the biggest AIDS program in Africa that was commercially run. They were putting condoms on the Coca-Cola vans to get them into countries that couldn't safely that even the UN couldn't safely get their vehicles into, but they'd let a Coca-Cola van in there because they wanted to drink their Coca-Cola. They were doing that. They worked on the biggest mosquito nets. They were doing extraordinary things. And I was just like, why don't you talk about this? Why don't you ever? And slowly over time, as brand purpose has become so important to younger generations, these stories are coming out with large companies. Unilever are brilliant at it, Procter & Gamble as well, and we're seeing it. And I think diversity is part of that whole area, and acceptance and representation and having a voice. It's part of that area, and I think Coca-Cola they've had some, every company that's 150 years old has some interesting history. But Coca-Cola has always been pretty good when it comes to diversity, partly because they're a southern based HQ in Atlanta, and you can't be in the city of Martin Luther King and not understand what diversity means to that town.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I take it, in a way, you're bringing all that history and everything we've talked about so far, and you're bringing it to the forefront today to kind of continue to work with companies to help understand and navigate this space.
I was in some meetings at Coke, who has a really good reputation with advertising. There's one of the earliest to do the Super Bowl with same-sex partners. They were, they'd done it in terms of they were one of the first companies to do multi-race, so white next to black on a poster in the South, which caused a furore in many states at the time. And but even I found some of the meetings I had to attend where I was pushing through some what's known as gay content, let's say on brands, and you had to jump through hoops just to prove it was going to get a return on investment, because the fear or the risk and I just thought, my God, if Coca-Cola's having that problem, and it is, because everyone is slightly nervous about the walk away by the straight majority, if you dare make a nod to people like us, if they're having a problem with it, God knows what the other companies are having. So I just thought, I didn't have the tools at my disposal because I didn't have the education. I couldn't sit there and say, this is why you need to do it, this is the research side, and I had nothing. I sat there, I felt like a dumb idiot, to be honest, and I felt quite ashamed, partly because I hadn't gone out and learnt it myself. My graduation as a gay guy was from university straight into the bars in Soho. I mean, that's not really education. And that's happened to so many of us. We didn't we got to know each other. We read the papers, but we didn't really immerse ourselves because we didn't have a formal education in what happened, how the suffering happened. And our fight for equality is the thing that unites all those letters as well. So I felt ashamed, and I felt pissed off that I didn't have the tools at my disposal. And so I just thought, I'm going to go back to university when I come back to Britain, because we came back from Atlanta, then New York, back to London. And I just thought, I'm going to go back and learn. And this course came out of the blue. I was in year 2 and I applied, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to write an essay. And at first I thought I had to write it in pencil, and I forgot that students now don't do that. Pen or pencil, literally longhand. I was just, but oh my God, I had to learn. The first 3 months of the degree, I was learning technology. All this stuff that goes. I mean, just and that was quite eye-opening. But yeah, no, it was shame. It was the fact that Margaret Thatcher didn't let it happen to our multiple generations. It was the fact that advertising as an industry, marketing as an industry hadn't opened the door. They didn't recognize it. They didn't push it back. What you don't know, you shy away from. And I just thought, here I am. If you draw a Venn diagram, I've got history, I've got marketing, and I've got this passion of my identity. I can demystify that and show people that there's an ethical case, there's a business imperative that's growing every year. There's more of us when you count the confidence that people have to admit it in surveys or in paper. We just had our census in 2021. I'm fascinated to see we haven't had the results yet, but I'm fascinated to see the results of that, because I suspect it's going to grow every single time we do it, every 10 years. It was the first time they asked about sexuality, 2021, in the UK ever. Which is brilliant. I mean, it's really good. So it was just, I've got these Venn diagrams. I've got to do it. Plus also, I didn't want. My whole life I've been doing every single aisle of the grocery store and supermarket. I've done coffee, I've done cornflakes, I've done porridge, I've done chocolates, I've done confectionery, I've done cleaning equipment, I've done washing powder, I've done shampoos. I just think that's good. It's great, good marketing experience. But am I going to feel good at the end of my life? What can I do to just increase representation and improve acceptance just as a whole? Because the more we do that, the more people will take it as the norm, and then acts of violence or hatred will diminish. Because the UN said in 2019 in their report that advertising was one of the main sectors of media that must act. The United Nations said that and said we have a role and a responsibility, and we weren't doing much. A company would tick a box and think they've done it for the next 5 years, which isn't the right way. So I'm generating golden rules of strategy for LGBT advertising, why it's right, and actually the benefit is huge, not just monetarily, but the happiness of a company.
Well, if anybody can take away from all this, it's your passion and your love for it, and that's probably the very most important. So I love that. And,
I could talk about it for hours.
I look forward to it, and so I travel a lot, and so I'm looking forward to my next trip to the UK. Unless you come out to New York first, I'd love to connect with you in the real world and just keep these conversations going.
Let's go for a drink. That would be amazing.
I would love that. But no, in the meantime, just really thank you for taking some time out of your day and just sharing some of your story with our audience here.
No problem. No problem at all. Anytime.
Thanks again.
And I love your brand, by the way, and all your online stuff. And I love your mission to make online better and a world for us that is ours. That's what's so important. That's what's so. I think you recognize that. It's just brilliant. I love it.
Well, thank you so much, and it's mutual, and look forward to seeing you. Thanks again.
So good.